We learned the last Maamar, and yesterday I had a chance to learn the Rebbe's Maamar that he said in 1960 on the Maamar that we learned. But now we're starting on page 28. Maamar Mulukatim of the Sefer we're using, of the previous Rebbe, Beis Samach Daled, Yom Beis the Rosh Hashanah. This was actually said on Rosh Hashanah, Tavshin Beis 1941. By the way, I gave you the wrong date to the last Maamar. It was not 1941, it was 1940. It was Erev Rosh Hashanah, Tavshin Aleph, which makes it in English, 1940. So just for the record, to correct what I said. But this Maamar is a year later, pretty much, and on Rosh Hashanah, Tavshin Beis. Just know, as a general rule, the Lubavitcher Rebbeim didn't do much speaking at all during Rosh Hashanah. The first night, I believe they what they didn't speak except not a Tainus, no, not because of Tainus Dibur, because they were saying Tillim, and the energy is a very, very shaky energy the first night of Rosh Hashanah, because it says the world is in a slumber, and we only get the chayas from the makif. And if Hashem waits to see during the davening and the Tkiyah Shofar, if we really want him as king. So the first night of Rosh Hashanah in Lubavitch, especially by the Rebbes, was a very, very intense time, and there was a lot of crying and davening, and the Frierdiker Rebbe, even here in America, he could daven for 2, 3, 4 hours, and it was like you were in the heaven with him, and there were tears. It was but even our Rebbe, who we didn't see that openly when he davened Ma'ariv the first night. But he, didn't speak. Again, I imagine he spoke to his wife at the Suda, but also I'm sure not a lot of chit-chat, So...
Rebbe, I missed what you said. What do you mean? He wasn't seen on Ma'ariv on Rosh Hashanah night?
He was seen, but he davened with the minyan. He didn't daven for 2-3 hours like his father-in-law, who davened extensively, and people saw tears coming, and it was a production. I mean, again, a Chabad production. It wasn't, an emotional outburst of wild gestures and things like that. But nevertheless, it was a very intense time. With the Rebbe, he davened with the minyan. At least what we saw. Do I know if he davened? Maybe he was mimicking the words. I can't tell you, but he was at the minyan. He came in for the minyan, and he left after the Aleinu. And it seemed like he davened with the minyan. But it is our custom not to speak, if possible, the first night of Rosh Hashanah. I know it's something very hard, but it can be done. And if you train your family, they know that the first night of Rosh Hashanah, we don't speak much, if at all, Okay, again.
The rest doesn't speak the first day.
No.
They don't speak the night and the first day.
Oh, okay.
Who doesn't? Who doesn't do that?
Breslov.
Anyway.
Tainus Dibur, night to the night.
In Chabad, it's not a Tainus Dibur. Tainus Dibur has I don't say a negative connotation. It's like, it is. It's like don't speak lashon hara. Don't speak. It's because you're connecting. You're trying to connect to something much greater, and you're trying to feel and experience that experience. So you're in thought. You're in the world of thought, the machshava. The world of speech is a contradiction to the world of thought. We've discussed this so many times, how it's easier to talk, and so few, and people are lazy to think, and to think. So the night of Rosh Hashanah is more of a machshava night. So therefore we refrain as little as possible from talking. That's all. If you're at the Suda and you need the knife for the challah, you say, please bring me the knife. You know what I'm saying? We're not talking about being extreme and cuckoo. But at the same time, I shouldn't say cuckoo, I take that back. I'm sorry. But at the same time, the energy is a machshava energy. So when we talk about a Maamar that said on the second day Rosh Hashanah, I recall being by the Rebbe many Rosh Hashanahs and hearing his Maamar. It was really a very short Farbrengen. I think probably the shortest Farbrengen in a year was the second day going into the Motzah Rosh Hashanah, what people called Ni'ilas HaChag. the Rebbe said a Maamar and maybe one or two brief sichos and sichos talks, and then they sang all of the Rabbeim's nigunim, and that was the end of the Farbrengen. I think within 2 hours the Farbrengen was over, and that was very unusual for a Farbrengen. Farbrengen went normally at least 3 hours, So Rosh Hashanah, you could see that the Farbrengen was so short. It was also, it seems like, in line with this idea of not talking much on Rosh Hashanah, even though the talk was Kedusha. But nevertheless, so I didn't say that before. When I say about not talking, we're talking about even Kedusha. So, I'm not saying you should sit at the Yom Tov meal, you shouldn't say Advar Torah. You should say Advar Torah, but, it's a different energy, so it also resulted in taking less time. Okay, let's go on. Hayom Haras, when we blow shofar, we say, Hayom Haras, today is the birth of the world. Hayom Yamid B'Mishpah, today, Kol Yisur Elamim, all creatures of the world stand in judgment today. The Rosh Hashanah Nikra Yom. So we see in this line that Rosh Hashanah is called a day, Yom. Why? Because of several reasons. The 2 days of Rosh Hashanah, the Gemara says, Ki Yom Arich the Damya are all like one long day. It's one long day of 48 hours. And the Frierdiker Rebbe explains, it isn't only that the 2 days are considered like one day, like we understand the Gemara, Ella, more so, the 2 days. It's one long day of light. When you learn the Gemara, Moshe, you understand the Gemara to mean that it's 48 hours to be one long day, which has night and day. The Frierdiker Rebbe says, no. It's one long day of only day. Because the Gemara says, it's the Gemara, Yoma Arichta. It's a day, a long day, and day is light. And he's going to explain that now. It was evening, was morning, was one day. The Hamesles, the 24 hours, consists of Laila v'Yom, night and day. What's the chiddush? What's the novelty of Rosh Hashanah? Rosh Hashanah, who Yom Arichta, Rosh Hashanah is a long day. The Gam Halayla L'Yom Yachoshev, that even the physical, actual night time of Rosh Hashanah, the Gemara says, is considered a day. Day, light. Moshe Myers, you understand the previous Rebbe's word? Okay. V'hainu dashnei leilos de Rosh Hashanah, both nights of Rosh Hashanah, hey meirim, they illuminate, k'moy hayom, just as the day does. So it's night. It's going to be night, Moshe, right? The first night, the second night. The Rebbe says it's Rosh Hashanah. And since the Gemara says it's one long day of 48 hours, it's 48 hours of Yom. So even the night, physically, it's dark outside, but the energy is a Yom, a light energy during the entire 48 hours. Here comes the bottom line, punchline. Therefore, both nights of Rosh Hashanah, tzrichim lemayet b'sheina. Now, this is a big chiddush. You have to minimize your sleep. We learn in Shulchan Aruch, it's even brought down, right, that you shouldn't sleep during the day because of bad mazel and all that. But at night, go for it. Comes the Frierdiker Rebbe along in 1941, and he tells the Jews of New York, many of which, were having issues with Judaism, and he tells them, my friends, you have to minimize your sleep at night. B'chol ho'efsher, as much as possible. What should you do instead? Not play cards, not play board games, not read the newspaper, not read the Ami, not read the Mishpacha. What should you do? You should say, be involved in praises and songs and praises through saying of Tillim. That's what the Rebbe says. So, you go to sleep and you can't sleep, you're up 2, 3, 4 in the morning, get up, say brachas, and take out a Tillim and say Tillim. You fall back to sleep, you get up 7, 8, get up, go to the mikveh, say Tehillim. See how many times you can finish Tehillim on Rosh Hashanah. I've done it, the most I've done in my life is 3 times. 3 times. My friend has done it 5 times. Non-stop saying Tehillim. We don't learn. We just say Tehillim. We daven, we eat something, we blow shofar for other Yidden if we can, and you say Tehillim is around the clock. That's what the previous Rebbe taught us and wants from a Lubavitcher at least. I would say it's good for everyone anyway. But here it's an interesting point.
Rabbi,
yes.
Question on that. If you're slow with the Ivrit, you're not so used to it, can you do it in English, the Tehillim?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Still has the merit.
But absolutely, but just say Tehillim. Just keep on saying. It's not a time to find interpretations on Tehillim. And again, if you're the type of person that you won't say the Tehillim because it's boring to you unless you look for the interpretations and understanding, then do that, But the avodah is to say Tehillim as much as possible. And again, one second, Yoni. What I find interesting, again, I don't remember this. It was the first that preparing this Maamar, L'mayit b'Shena, at night. And again, what's the Rebbe's principle, Hill? Since the 48 hours are not just one long day of night and day, but really one long day of all day. So really, you don't sleep during the day, so you should minimize your sleep at night as well. Yes, Yoni, what do you want to say?
Was this was a concept that was not before the Frierdiker Rebbe? There wasn't a concept to do this.
It wasn't. My recollection from what I read and heard, it wasn't spoken. No, it wasn't spoken about. I shouldn't say no. I would have to look up again the sources, but the first thing comes to mind is that this was the previous Rebbe's, push. I don't think his father made such an emphasis on this idea. And again, we could start debating, why, if that's the case, why the Frierdiker Rebbe and not his father and the previous Rebbes, and probably you would argue that that's because of the generations, because to the previous generations they were saying Tehillim anyway most of the time, and because of the First World War and the difficulties of the communism and the Holocaust and everything, so the Frierdiker Rebbe had to introduce it again. It's interesting, since you mentioned it, I'll just tell you briefly because I don't want to get into this now. But in the late 1930s, in 36 and 37, the previous Rebbe wrote, I think, to either the Kapishnitzer Rebbe. There's a Chassidus called Kapishnitz. They're great grandchildren of the Holy Ruzhner Rebbe, the Holy Ruzhner, Rebbe Yisrael Ruzhner. On Malchi Yisrael, the big shul with the big dome. One second. So, the Frierdiker Rebbe started a campaign in 33 already. 1933, the Frierdiker Rebbe wrote that he would like everyone to say Tehillim after davening. I looked a little bit into it, and it's interesting. It seems to me that was the same year where Hitler, Yamach Shemam, rose to power in 1933. So it seems to me that was kind of a holy, act that the Rebbe did in a way countering, the negativity of Hitler, Yamach Shemam, because it was the same year, 33. Anyway, again, this is not written anywhere that it was because of Hitler, but that was my own thinking. Anyway, so in 36 and 37, or maybe 38, once the Anschluss started, I don't recall exactly which year, the Rebbe wrote to the Kapishnitzer Rebbe, I think it was, to ask him to not only himself and his Hasidim, but he was the head, I think, of what was called Admoirim. There was an organization, a Vad of Rebbes, and he was either the head or one of the heads. So the Rebbe wanted him to publicize amongst the other Hasidic Rebbes to push the agenda of saying Tehillim. And he wrote back to the Rebbe and he said, it's not our custom. And it's not our custom. He said that the Holy Rishner, his great-grandfather, didn't do that. That he didn't do saying of Tehillim on Shabbos. Oh yeah, it was about saying Tehillim on Shabbos. So the Rebbe wrote back to him, and he said, we have a Messiah tradition that there was once a certain bad decree, and the Rishner said, you should say Tehillim, and it was on Shabbos. So I think he wrote back that was an exception. And I think at that it ended. So I don't believe that he really accepted what the Frierdiker Rebbe wanted of him. So there are different traditions. But it's obvious that the Frierdiker Rebbe, from I think all the Rebbes, not only Chabad, but Polish and Hungarian Rebbes and all the Rebbes, he made it into a campaign. He made it into a minute. He made it into be part of the tefillah, and he wanted really Klal Yisrael to accept it. I can't say that it was that way because the in Chabad we say the Yom Tehillim after Aleinu, and then we have a Kaddish, and that's part of the tefillah in a way. You don't find that in any shuls. They right after Aleinu, everyone checks out. When I have yard site and I'm not davening in a Chabad shul, it's a kind of a struggle. I have to ask everyone, please remain for a minute to say with me a kapitel Tillim that I could say Kaddish. And usually people are good about it, But I have been told, I remember once in a shul, I've been told it's not our minhag here and you can't do this here. And it was a Chassidish shul, and a very nice Chassidus and everything. But, so, when you asked me about the previous Rebbe, I'm glad you brought it up, Yoni. Yeah, you could say it was kind of his baby. Yes, Hillel, now it's your turn, I'm sorry.
No, it's just I wanted to say there's a kapitchen of Beis Medrash in Beit Shemesh. So.
Okay, thank you for telling me. I didn't know. So let's go back to the Maamar. So the question is, why should you minimize your sleep and spend as much time as possible in saying Tehillim? The Rebbe tells us why. Because the Avodah of Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippurim, what's the special Avodah during these days? We are in the mode of a servant. And it's known the difference between a master, an owner, and a sar, and an eved. The sar kolin yoni hu ben yonim sichlim. The master, all his entire occupation involves intellectual things. He's planning the plot. He's involved in sichlim. The eved. What about the slave? His primary service, who be'avoda pshuta be'kabola sel dafka, cleaning the floors, putting the svarim away, folding the talesim, taking out the rubbish. Eved. That's what you want? That's what I do. I think we could learn from Rabbi Shapiro, Zolzan Gezunt of Eish Kodesh, how he was the Rav of the shul, and I saw with my own eyes how many times he mamish did avodas evet, carrying bags, schlepping bags from his car with paper goods and food, and I'm sure Baisha, you guys know much more. But it was amazing for me. I never really saw a Rav here do that. Every Rav here has a shamish. Every Rav has a gabbai. Yeah. Every Rebbe has an attendant. Show me the last time you saw a Rav, an attendant, take out the garbage. I mean, I saw him myself tying up the bag, taking it out, and putting it into the bin. I saw it, and
it's real humility. He's an example, Rav, of real humility, and he serves people at the Shalosh Shudas every Shabbos. He's serving the food. You never see that.
I'm just saying it's a quality, an Eved quality, but not a bad, a holy Eved quality. So the Rebbe says, Yoni, that the Avodah of Rosh Hashanah, we are Avodim. We're Avodim. That's the mode. Oh yes, we say Avinu Malkeinu, but the Iker is Kabbalah soil. Now, when you say Tehillim, and let's not kid ourselves, most of us don't know what we're saying, but pretty much because it's so poetic, and if you don't stop and the avodah of Tehillim is Kabbalah soul compared to learning a Maamar Chassidus, a piece of Gemara, a halacha, right? Which you talk and you debate and you dialogue and you look into the commentaries. Tehillim is saying Tehillim. Like I told you, the Sfardim, they read Kabbalah and we read Tehillim. So what is that? What does that feel like? An Eved. Do what you want. You tell me to praise you because the psukim of Tilim, David HaMelech praises HaKadosh Baruch Hu and they're powerful. I'm in. So that's why he says, this explains, Moshe, why the Rebbe says as much time as possible that you have on Rosh Hashanah and the Seres Yom Tshuva and Yom Kippur, say Tehillim. It's that because it's demonstrative. It shows Kabbalah soil. In other words, what do we want to show HaKadosh Baruch Hu in these 10 days? That we are your servants and we want you as our king and accept us and therefore give us a good year because we want to be your servants. No, so how are you showing Hashem you're your servants? If you learn his Torah, you're not showing you're his servant. You're showing you're his master. You're his chacham. You know what I'm saying? It's not Kabbalah soil. Kabbalah soil means put yourself aside and do what the master wants. You do understand, you don't understand, it's irrelevant. That's what he wants, that's what I do. Let's continue inside. Now we understand why Rosh Hashanah is called Yom, right? Go back to the opening phrase, Hayom, Haras, Hayom. Today, Rosh Hashanah is the birth of the world. So we call Rosh Hashanah, it doesn't say Yoni Rosh Hashanah Haras. It says Hayom. He couldn't afford to say the words Rosh Hashanah. He had to say Hayom. Says the Rebbe, yeah. He wants to point out that Rosh Hashanah is all about Yom, day, light. The Zel, the Rosh Hashanah Nikra Yom, the Gam Halayla Nikras Yom. Because even the night of Rosh Hashanah is called day. And that's what the Gemara means when it says that the 48 hours are one long day. We don't mean a one long day of night and day. We mean one long day, of all light. That's finished. One explanation. And more so, see if it says, Atem nitzavim hayoim, you're standing today, this week's Parsha. On Rosh Hashanah, you, the Yidden, you are man. The sages say, oh, you are called man. You're standing steadfast. Lizkeis badin. You know why you're standing like a soldier, like a macho person? Because you're going to be meritorious in din. It's like if you have a court case. And if you have any thought, maybe I'm going to lose, you stand in front of the judge and your feet are shaking. But if you go and you say, I know I'm going to win, to yourself, and you have that confidence, when you stand in front of the judge, you basically stand with, hey judge, I'm going to tell you what to rule. You don't say a word, of course. But that being confident, and that's what we say, when we go, we're going to a judgment, Rosh Hashanah. We're going to a din, right? The question is, how do you come to this Bezdin? How do you come to this court case? Do you come like a wobbly weakling? Or do you come like a roaring lion, strong and confident that Liskis Bedin, says the Rebbe? When it says, Atem nitzavim hayoim, and it doesn't say omdim. The conventional word for standing is la'amod, ya'amod, oimed. Doesn't say oimdim. It says nitzavim. And there's a verse, nitzav melech, the way a king stands with uprightness and forcefulness. You see, this is a man. This is someone who knows what he wants. Hashem says, if that's the case, I'm giving him a good year. Liskas bedin. No plaintiff will be able to convince me otherwise. You know why? Because look at the way this guy is standing and the way you're coming. You're coming with this argument and that argument, you know. And he's standing with confidence. He doesn't have to show off. And it reminds me when I was in Marin County, we had our hearing. This was after the 1989 earthquake in San Francisco. So, you know, the courthouse, the regular one was closed. So they rented space in a plush high-riser in downtown Frisco. And I remember going in there, I thought I'm going into a building, you know, fancy Frisco building. And we came and it's gorgeous and fancy and the three judges are standing there and this non-Jewish probably Italian or Irish lawyer, tall, handsome, the hair made back. He looked like he really, he could fit into, to a movie, And he starts hacking with his lies against Chabad. They have 150 cars every Friday night. We barely had a million. And they're taking away the parking places from all the swim meets and the soccer moms. And he's shooting. And my lawyer, Sandy Rosen, I hope and pray he's well, Yale graduate, classmate of Alan Dershowitz, born in Crown Heights, at the Crown Heights Hospital in Crown in Albany in the 50s or maybe earlier. And we hired him, and he said his father would always say, I wish you could do something for the Jewish people as a lawyer. He was, by the way, the lead lawyer in the Kent State, Ohio case, in 1974 case. Sanford Rosen, if you look it up, Sanford Rosen was the lawyer. So he was our lawyer for the case. Our second lawyer, our first lawyer was also great, Phil Green, and then we had a second lawyer. Anyway, both Jewish. So, and I'm saying to myself, because Sanford Rosen, he still had his briefcase that they used to carry around the 60s and 70s, the lawyer's briefcase, and it wasn't a briefcase, it was a leather kind of bag, It reminded me, of what you saw probably on television, and, he's old-fashioned, okay? He's old-fashioned. He's an old-fashioned lawyer. And you look at it and you saw a Yiddish face. His face was full of Yiddish, full of Yiddishkeit. And he was a real Yid. He is a real Yid. And we had a good time, and we worked together very nicely. And I said to myself, I took a look at this Irishman. I said, oy vey, how is he going to do against this one? I don't want to say more. How is he going to do against this one? And then I sat back, and I saw them go at each other with the three judges. It was amazing. Because Sanford Rosen was confident, quiet, answered the questions, heard the arguments, didn't make a fanfare, while the opponent lawyer was all over the place and moving his body, and he's macho and all that. And they ruled unanimously in our favor. But before that, they shot down his arguments, and they proved that he was lying, basically. And I remember looking at him, he couldn't believe that these three judges were making mincemeat out of him, So the idea, and we won 3-0. We won that case 3-0, and that was ultimately what gave us permission to have a shul in a residential neighborhood in San Rafael, California. Nitzav. Nitzav means confidence. Again, confidence could mean in the outward posture, and then confidence inside. So I'm not saying it has to be, where it's seen in the body movements. I'm not saying that. But the confidence. So let's go back to the Maamar. Atem kruyim adam, nitzavim v'oimdim, liskais, badin, the nitzav moira lamida shel maila. What does this nitzav represent? A heavenly standing. Moshe, could you imagine if Hashem was right in your room in front of you now? How would he be standing? Or let's say the angels, how would they be standing? They would be standing very firm, very confident. It says, Hashem stands upon you. Elokim. Next page. Elokim nitzav badas melech. God stands in the congregation, badas kel, in the kel. The gam be'es hamishpat hagodol. So going back to us now, even during the great judgment, the great case, hine atem nitzavem v'zeichem b'din. You're standing steadfast and you're being meritorious in judgment. The Zeu Hayom Haras. This is the meaning. Today, Rosh HaShana is the birth of the world. The Rosh HaShana shenikra Hayom, Rosh HaShana, which is called day, hu Haras Hayom. It's the birthday of the world. So now the Rebbe is going to tackle this word Haras. Right? What should the word have been? Hillel. What's the conventional word? Hayom Yom Haledes Shel Olam. Right? Hayom Yom Haledes. Hayom Yom Haledes. Right? So it should have said, Hayom Holedis Oilam. It doesn't say Holedis. It uses a very unconventional word, Haras, and which means birth. But it's very unconventional. So the Rebbe now wants to tackle and understand and show us why the word Haras is used. Let's continue. So he says, there's two meanings to the word Haras. Loshen Heroin Veleda, pregnancy and birth. The Loshen Reses Upachat. Another meaning is fear, tremble and fear. So we have two meanings for the word Haras. Upeirushay Hayom Haras Olam, and it means today is the birth of Haras Olam. Today the world was created, was born. On this day of HaShana, there's a new energy that is drawn into the world. And that's why it's called not Tchilat HaShana, the beginning of the year. It's called the head of the year. The Kamoi Shabi Adam, just as in a person, Rosh, the head. It includes all the vitality for all of the limbs, are all in the nerve center in the head. And in the head, it's the general seat of vitality, of energy. And from the head, it's drawn to all the limbs. Cain, who so too in the moral. But there is a general chayas that is drawn to all spiritual worlds and all creatures. And this chayas that is given on Rosh Hashanah comes first through a judgment. The Hayom Yamed B'Mishpat Kol Yitzurei Lomin. Today on Rosh Hashanah, all creatures of the world stand in judgment. Im Yischachu v'Oifen Yischachu Sam. If they'll be renewed, and even if they will be, in what way? V'Oifen Yischachu Sam. Now this is important. What's going on, Hillel Rosh Hashanah? Rosh Hashanah Hillel is going on. Will the world get its chayas for one more year? And even if it's going to get its chayas for one more year, what type of chayas will it get? Right? Imagine if, God forbid, the world will get a mediocre chayas or a slumberly chayas. It ain't that great. So this is what we're being judged at. Hashem says, I want to see if you want my chayas. And if you want my chayas, my energy, what type of chayas do you want? This is Yamod Yitzurei Lomim, right? Hayom Haras Olam, Hayom Yamed B'Mishpat. Today everyone stands in judgment. Kol Yitzur Olamim. All creatures, not just humanity, the angels and the souls and the spiritual worlds and the celestial beings, everyone is judged. Don't think it's only us. The heavens being judged too. This is one interpretation of the word Haras Olam. So to repeat, what does Haras mean here? Haras means here from the word Hiroyin Veleda, birth. Today the world is reborn. And the question is, in what manner will it be reborn? Finished. Now he goes to the second interpretation. The second meaning of the word Haras Olam, today it's a day of fear and tremble. Heint in Yiddish. Look at these beautiful Yiddish words. Heint zittert. Zittert means trembles. Heint means today. Today trembles die Welt, the world. So is there place for trembling on Rosh Hashanah, Moshe? Absolutely. Haras Olam. It was the day, and people came to stand by Hashem. Amongst them were also the Satan came. The Targum on that verse says, it was on the day of great judgment, which is what? Rosh Hashanah. The Reish Shata, which is the beginning of the year. The Rosh Hashanah Yom Adin VaMishpat. The Rosh Hashanah, the day of judgment. The Ozboin HaMalochim Malachim Litzi Yosher, on the day of Rosh Hashanah. the angels that are Melitza Yosher, they speak positively for us. And guess what? Their foes and opponents come. And the angels that demand judgment and say, no, he doesn't deserve it. You know what he did on December 15th last year? Let me take out a file. Oh. So why do you want to give him a good year? Chas v'shon, not. It gets more tasty now from every single speech, words, and action that man does. Whether it's good, whether it's bad. You create an angel. You hear that? We create an angel. Everything we say creates an angel. Everything we do creates an angel. So we have the good angels that come from the good speech and the good acts. And the counter that we have bad angels from the bad speech and the bad acts. And within them there are different levels. There are good angels that are created from your good avodah in Torah mitzvahs and good behavior, good midos, character. You have bad angels from the detail, the no good details that you did throughout the year. You create bad angels, and so too. This is a very important point coming up. There are good angels that are created from good acts of others. But you made it possible. You hear that? You made it possible for them to do their avodah. And because you made it possible for them to do their avodah, those angels that were created by them, you get credit for them. Asher hu zikas harabim. So when you make it possible for others, you say this by arousing others, like bayitim Torah, and other people learn Torah because you brought it to their attention. Regarding good midos and charity, so you get part of it. So you get part of the angels that were created through the good speech and action of others. You get part of the credit. You're a gabbai in a shul, and you banged on the beam, and you said, tonight everyone come to learn between Mincha and Ma'ariv. We have to do it. It's the Aseres Yimei Tshuva. And a person that would have been home, wasting time, surfing the internet, sleeping, hopping the chaynik, and he gets up and he comes because he heard you make an announcement, you get part of that schus. The Rebbe says, if it works in the positive, it has to work also in the negative because we got free will. When you do something, and because of you, another person does something not proper, that not proper angel, the angel created because of the not proper act of the other person, sorry, you're going to be at fault also. And that bad angel is also going to haunt you. Yes, Moshe. Your mute's on. Can't hear. You're mute.
Yeah, got it. Okay. So the question is, according to the year, we're judged according, like you said, what he did in December or whatever, as opposed to what you're praying on the day of Rosh HaShana. Is there which has more importance, or is it equal? What someone has done in the previous year and on Rosh HaShana? The avodah.
It's a double avodah. It's an avodah of regretting. The avodah is Kabbalah soil. The avodah is accepting the yoke of Hashem. But in order to accept the yoke of Hashem, you have to know what you did when you didn't accept His yoke. In other words, when you go to a court case, they're gonna bring up issues. Of course, you'd like the judge just to forget about everything and just talk about the future. It doesn't work that way. You were cited for a speeding. You were cited for a speeding ticket. So promising the judge, I'm never gonna speed again. He's gonna give you a ticket. You have to justify why you sped, etc. Or maybe you didn't speed and the camera got it wrong, whatever.
I hear you. Okay, that makes sense.
The same thing Rosh Hashanah. You know?
Right.
You know, in other words, Moshe, how does Hashem know? Hashem knows everything, but that you really mean what you're saying. Your record shows otherwise. I don't mean you, I mean us. Our record shows otherwise. Why should he trust us? So we have to prove.
Right.
We have to prove that we mean it this time and that we really regret. That's Rosh Hashanah.
Right. We're pleading our case on Rosh Hashanah, but it's based on our previous actions the past year.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah. What?
Sorry. Did you want to say something?
No. You.
I was just going to. The other question is, you talk about being confident, like when he went into the case, Sandy, your lawyer,
yeah.
Confidence, and yet we're supposed to tremble before Hashem. It seems like a conflict. Trembling, and how do you? With humility, how do we?
Right. Good. Very good. Very good question. Very good question. The answer to the question is the same answer as to the. How do you reconcile, Hillel? If there's Hashem b'simcha, v'gilui berada, serve God with joy, and rejoice, gilui with tremble. It's in one verse. How do you do both? So the answer is inside yourself. For yourself, you have to be shook up. And once you shake yourself up, you'll feel cleansed. And you'll feel, I'm never doing this again. Then you stand in confidence. Then you stand. So of course, you can't just pretend. No, you have to go through an inner therapy, an inner washout, an inner cleansing, where you did deal with the issues that are no good and haunt you and all that, and you understand that it's not good for you, and therefore you make a resolve that I will not do this again. So inside you're supposed to tremble.
I see.
Once you go through that trembling feeling, in other words, like this, when you come to the judge, you should have already gone through the trembling experience, and when you stand there, you're already post-tremble. Why?
You've done it. You've done tshuva.
That's right. You've done an inside tshuva. So you are now one piece of tshuva. So the fact, but the way it works is the judge has to hear your case, and if you think about it, when a person, this is not easy, but if you can accomplish this, when you go to the judge and when you go before the court, they see it in you, and they see that you're a new person. Reminds me of a short story. Rabbi Yehuda Chassid, you've heard of Rabbi Yehuda Chassid, he lived about 500 years ago. So he wrote certain things that you shouldn't do, and they're like very, very heavenly. So this idea of two sisters who are married to two brothers shouldn't live in the same city. That doesn't say anywhere in Halacha. It says in Rabbi Yehuda Chassid. And those that follow that actually move out to another city, not to be in the same city. Right? That's Rabbi Yehuda Chassid. For example, you shouldn't completely close off a stove that heats up a synagogue, a shul. You shouldn't completely close it off. I think that's one of his things. So I was, for example, in the Batei Rand, shul in Nachlaot, that's over 100 years old, and they had such a stove, oven, whatever, to warm up the shul, and they did close most of it, but it seems like they left a little bit open because of the Rabbi Yehuda Chassid statement. So there's another thing, I'm just giving you examples, that on a day that you travel, you shouldn't polish your shoes. Okay, these are things from Rabbi Yehuda Chassid. Another thing Rabbi Yehuda Chassid says is that once you start traveling, you shouldn't, and you forgot something. I'm sorry, once you start traveling, you shouldn't turn back. There was a Lubavitcher Chassid, the Rabbi Zalman Garari of the Garari family, and he, was he was more on the frum type, and he took these things very seriously. And he once went to the airport. And he realized on his way to the airport that he forgot something at home. And he reminded himself, what am I going to do? Rabbi Yehuda HaChosed says you shouldn't turn back once you started to travel. So he called the Rebbe's office and he asked them to ask the Rebbe what to do. And the Rebbe answered him, learn a chapter in Tanya. Because when you learn a chapter in Tanya, and if you learn it properly, you're not the same person you were after you learned the chapter than to the way you were before you learned the chapter. So if you learn now a chapter, it's not you going back to your house. You're a new person returning to your house. And that's not included in the Rabbi Yehuda HaChosed's custom. Now, only a Lubavitcher Rebbe could tell you that. Anyone else who tells you that should see a doctor, okay? But when a tzaddik tells you that, it's real. Now, Moshe, it was up to him to learn that chapter in Tanya in such a way that it makes a transformation in him that he isn't the same Zalman Gerari. There was Rabbi Gerari as he was before he left his home and he started to go towards the airport. And now when this Gerari goes back to his home, he's a different Gerari. Why am I telling you this? When you go through a tshuva process with this inside work, right? And then you come before the judge, you're not the same person. That's the point. And the judge looks at you, he's not looking at a guilty person. He's looking at a meritorious person. So he rules your merit, you're right, you have a good year. Why? Because you've gone through the inside work. So the answer to your question, Moshe, is that they really do go together. And that ultimately joy, simcha, Ibdas Hashem b'simcha, is so much more appreciative and meaningful when you go through the Gilui Berada. When you have the Gilui Berada, then the simcha is real simcha. It's not frivolity and it's not foolishness and foolishness. It's not. It's a different simcha. Chevra, it's a very nice piece that we're learning now, and we'll continue tomorrow in Mitzvah Hashem. But remember that what we learned at the end is very important. Maybe the most important thing that we learned today. What we make possible for others, in the good and God forbid in the bad, is part of our responsibility. So when you help someone else and you encourage someone else to learn and daven and give tzedakah and be nice and be a mensch and everything else, believe me, that goes into your account. And chas v'sholem, if you do the opposite and you give people an opportunity to goof off and etc., Nebuch, it also goes into your account and you have more to clean up. So, the Rebbe has to be honest. He can't just, whitewash it. But the point he's bringing out is that there is Haras Olam. The first meaning is it's the birth of the world. The second meaning is the world trembles. And the trembling could be, like we discussed, negative, fearful, I got a problem, I can't handle it. Or it could be a healthy tremble. It's a tremble that really brings out the best in a person. Chevra, have a great day, and we'll talk tomorrow's Chai Elul, so we'll talk a little bit about that tomorrow, the birthday of the Alter Rebbe and the Holy Baal Shem Tov, and we should only have simchas. Today is my daughter's 18th birthday, my youngest daughter, Devorah Leah, so Baruch Hashem, it's a milestone in her life. She's been waiting for 18 all year. I've been hearing about her becoming 18, so Baruch Hashem, she becomes 18, she have a good mazel and be gesund, and we shall be zeichet to Mashiach Tzidkenu. Amen. Thank you. Amen. Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Great class.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.